Hey, Harpslingers, welcome to the Harpslinger podcast, where each and every week we hang out with the greatest harmonica players in the music business. And as I always say, if you're watching this on the Honer Music Facebook page, hey, go ahead and share that to your own personal profile. Help us spread the word about all these great harmonica players out in the world. Also about Honer Harmonicas. I'm endorsed by Honer Harmonicas. Great group of people. They always take great care of their artists, so check them out. Also, if you're watching this, or if you're not watching this on the Harpslinger YouTube channel, by all means, go there and hit that subscribe button, ding the bell. That way we can keep you up to date on all this new content that's coming out. Lots and lots of great artists on the docket coming in the future, and 31 episodes so far of your favorite harmonica players. I said this last week. If you haven't seen one of your favorite harp players on the show, shoot me a little direct message. Let me know who you'd like to see on the show. I'll do my best to get them on. Okay, everybody. I'm excited. I get excited this time every week, and this is going to be a great one, too. My next guest has recorded on over 1,800 individual album cuts, movie scores, and jingles. His original instrumental, Shuffle the Deck, was aired on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, love Colbert, and the WWE Network in 2019. He received a gold record for the Toronto Blue Jays theme song, OK Blue Jays, and has 2 double platinum and Juno Award album credits, multiple Maple Blues Awards, and he was the Harmonica Player of the Year nominee for Canada's National Blues Awards. Here he is, the one and only Roly Platt. How you feeling, Roly?
Good. How are you, Jamie?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to have you on the podcast. I'm a big fan. I follow you on YouTube. I ordered the harmonica necklace from your website. I have the Harpwa, which we're going to talk about today. In its beautiful case and everything. So how's life? How you doing, man?
Good. Am I the first Canadian that you've interviewed?
Yes, you are. So that's a milestone. Yeah, I'm trying to branch out. Not just be United States driven. I did have Rachel Plauz on the show from France.
I watched some of that. It was great. She's amazing.
She's an amazing human as well. Yes, truly. I'd love to know some background, do a little digging if you don't mind,
Sure.
And find out about where you came from. What was the inspiration for you to pick up a harmonica and pursue this as your your life's sort of goal, to be a great harmonica player? When did you first be turned on by the harp?
Well, I bought my first harmonica on my 17th birthday as a present to myself, intentionally. I'm going to buy myself a harmonica, and I'm going to learn how to play, or at least attempt to learn how to play. But before that, I have an older brother, an older sister as well, but my older brother played a little harmonica. He's about 5 or 6 years older than me. And he never became a great player, but he had really cool taste in music. So before I was even sort of introduced to harmonica, he'd introduced me to some very eclectic music, from, Dan Hicks to John Mayall to Butterfield to list goes on, but like everything but normal stuff.
Nice.
And I was listening to all the normal things, Zeppelin and the Beatles and Supertramp and, bands like that as a teenager. And then he introduced me to this alt world of music. And that's where he's my older brother. So it's like, listen to this. You got to listen to this. So I forced myself to listen to these albums. And I remember the Butterfield double live album was one of them, and I didn't like it at all. Like I'm listening and I'm skipping through the records, the album, and it doesn't make any sense. People are just playing a bunch of crap. Like I didn't get it.
Right.
And then it was one or two of the songs that suddenly the harmonica came through. Mm-hmm. That moment where you get it, what the person's doing, the essence of what they're doing, and they move you. And that was sort of the moment for me. And like I said, my brother played a little bit. So when I did eventually said, I'm going to do this, I fantasized about being able to play like Butterfield. I thought, what an amazing thing. I had to walk into a club and be able to just get up on stage and do that. It was like, man, that's all I want out of life. Right.
Yeah.
And I'd see other musicians in that period. I'd be going out to clubs. Toronto had a great music scene back then. So I'd be, skipping school or missing the morning because I was out till 3 in the morning or whatever, going to these clubs to check out, at 16 and 17 to check out local Toronto blues bands and various. We had a pretty eclectic scene. And that would inspire me. Like, I want to do that for a living. I'd see David Wilcox was one of the artists. I don't know if you probably don't know him in the States so much, but very eclectic character himself, and especially back then. And I'm just sitting there going, what is that?
Yeah.
Wow. I want to do that. Right.
Right.
So my brother, gave me the 3-minute lesson, like you don't play in the same key, it's called cross harp.
Right.
You got to learn how to bend a note. No, that's not how you do it. That lesson.
Right.
And then the third one was, give me that. You'll never be able to play. That was the lesson. And I practiced like a madman, or pretty diligently in the beginning. And then he came back to visit about 6 months later, and he says, play something for me. And I started to play whatever I was doing. And he looks at me and goes, geez, he says, I think you're better than me. And I just went, like, F off.
Of course I am.
Quit bugging me. And that was the start of it anyway. But I do owe, he was my sort of biggest music supporter, and anything he heard, he would direct me to it and stuff like that, over the years.
That's great. It's very important, I think, in those formative years for someone in our camp to be encouraging, even if it's a big brother who's kind of nudging you or pushing you around a little bit. But it's good to have somebody there that's sort of supporting the idea of you being a musician.
Yeah, and back then, that's all there was. There wasn't like you would go to a club. It's so different now. Like it's like another planet. With how people learn, right? On any instrument. Back then, I had an album, 5 or 6 or 10 albums. Yeah. That was a window into that world. And then I would go to a club, physically go to the club, and hope to talk to the harp player or whatever for 5 minutes. And they didn't share everything they knew about back then. It was much more, hey, I've been doing, I spent 30 years doing this. I'm not just telling some stranger, the gear I'm using or the trick that I did or whatever. Yeah. They would help you if they liked you and took you under their wing, kind of thing. So, and that's kind of what happened with me with a couple of people in Toronto. Dutch Mason was a big Canadian blues act, and Dutchie was from the East Coast, and they took me under their wing at probably 18 years old before I was playing professionally. And I'd get up with them in these big clubs in Toronto, and you learn very quickly that way.
I think that's the quickest way to learn, actually. I mean, once you have a few things under your belt where you can get up and not make a utter fool of yourself. Just being on stage, having that musical conversation, stepping on people's toes and getting the weird look, all of that. You learn so much more like in 10 minutes sitting in than you do in 10 lessons, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's great value in practicing on your own and working out stuff, but doing that and applying it on stage is literally another world. Mm-hmm. For all the reasons you mentioned. I was taught very quickly, mainly by negative, don't do that,
right.
And you go, oh, okay, because I didn't know anything. You don't know anything. Who's going to tell you? Like you're listening to records. You don't know what the process is of where they play, where, in the record, why they play, where they're playing. You just sort of copy them.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm old enough that I had a very similar experience. I mean, there was no YouTube when I started playing, and I didn't know any harp player. I knew one harmonica player who is and was fantastic, and he showed me, some things. But I remember going to blues clubs in New York City and sneaking, when the band would take a break, sneaking over to his amp and seeing what his settings were, just and writing them down real quick so I wouldn't forget after a couple of beers, how my amp is squealing. How come his amp isn't squealing? What kind of amp is he using? Oh, okay. Where's the bass and the treble knobs? Where are those sounds? So I was like
Yeah.
sneaking around.
Yeah, and you get only little opportunities every once in a while. You can't sit there, for 4 hours on YouTube and just go, "How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do this?" And there's the answer,
Mhm.
or at least one person's interpretation.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think there's because of that, because of the way it is now, people are advancing very quickly because you can get answers to things very quickly. People have figured out stuff. There, it's you have things like transcribe or slow downer that you can slow stuff down. Like, what the hell is that?
Right.
Like what? And change keys. You
Yeah,
know,
totally.
on
Yeah.
a record, what did we have? You had the dial where you could turn it down a semitone, the
Uh,
pitch shift on mine, at least it would go
yeah.
down a semitone. So, because I wouldn't have an E flat or an F sharp or something. So
Yes.
I could tune it down. Then, of course, it slows down. But that was it.
Oh,
You can't slow anything down without it going, like this. So, I mean, what a game changer that bit of technology is, as simple as it is now.
yeah, for sure. Another thing that you mentioned that I want to like, and I've said it before on the show, the harmonica community today doesn't really, from my perspective, doesn't really resemble what players were described from the old days. It seems like to be a very supportive network, encouraging, open, and willing to show techniques. Uh, in the day, it was like you were guessing, like you said, and B, nobody wanted to tell you how they did that thing.
No, no, not. I mean, you'd have to, if you were lucky. Like I said, they take you under their wing if they liked you, and I think it might be like if they see that you're going to be good, like that you like maybe they like better to be friends with this guy than.
Yeah.
But they would take you in and let you play. And I heard a bit of Jason Ritchie's interview, and he was saying about that, where what a valuable thing that was, where I can't remember the artist, but would take him in and tell him stuff, like, no, don't do that, man, go home. And I didn't have it that bad, but I did have people, when I said the wrong thing in the wrong place
Yeah.
in the dressing room and stuff, I got put in my place very quickly. I only did it once.
Right. Because you want to be in the group, you want to play, right? You
Yeah.
want to learn.
And he says, Roly, he says, he says, you're a great harp player, but you got a lot to learn about the music business. And I went, okay, I'll remember that.
Yeah. And that's actually a very true statement. The music business, there's so much to actually learn. And if we knew all of these things going in, or how much we were going to have to contend with, I wonder. We have done something else.
It's very different. Yeah. Doing it for a living is definitely different, but it's great.
Yeah.
It's
You
the
started.
only business where people are like, look at us. We're sitting here joking around.
Yeah.
We have something in common with that, and so you find humor. Go do another job, do a day job, and try and find that same connection with other people you work with. It isn't there because I've done it
Yeah.
once in a while, but music, that's one of the things I really really enjoy with the business is the community, like the people, and the sense of humor with the people in the community. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to find that a few other art-based sort of professions, but you're not going to find that in the accounting firm at the Globe and Mail or something in Toronto.
No. No, definitely not. Definitely not. Well, you mentioned you started playing professionally. You were 18, I believe, when you started playing professionally
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
with the Cement City
Stompers.
Stompers. Yeah, that's a great name for a band.
City Stompers. Yeah, we shortened it to just Cement City.
Okay,
After a
wonderful.
while,
How did
we had to rebrand ourselves. Right?
right. I hear you. How did that come about? How did you end up at such a young age? I mean, you must have developed quickly as a
I
player.
did. I practiced hard every day, and I sort of had a regiment. I locked myself. I was living with my mom at the time, so I could do whatever I wanted. God bless her. She tolerated all those early years. And I just practice. I just sit with a record player and just practice, jamming, experimenting,
Yeah.
experimenting. Um, What was the question?
Well,
The
just
band.
how did your position in this band come about, and also, you know, I've heard you mention in other interviews and in articles about how you weren't really playing material that had harmonica in it at all.
Yeah,
So you were sort of left to your own devices to figure out where that instrument was going to fit in.
yeah, which
You had to
shaped my playing ultimately.
yeah.
The way it happened was there was I'd go out to jam. So I'd go out to not so much jams, but like a Saturday afternoon matinee. They'd have them, I don't know, in those days where
Yeah.
you'd play 6 nights, right?
Uh-huh.
6 nights a week,
Yeah.
every week. And then Saturday would be a matinee plus the evening show. So it'd be 6 nights plus a matinee. No wonder you got good and tight in these bands because you're playing almost 7 days a week
Right.
with the same people. Anyway, so I go to these jams, and that's what happened. They said, "Oh, you should come back to the." No, it was the other way around. Actually, I entered a little talent contest, right? Little Nashville Star of Canada.
Yeah, right on.
But it was 90% singing. It was all singers getting up, like local. This is just small time, right? But in the club, and they had a master of ceremonies running the thing. Anyway, I got up to play harmonica as my talent, and I would have been 18. And I don't know what I played, but I played with the house band there, this country band. And they said, "Oh, you should come back on Saturday. There's a couple of people coming in to sit in with the band. You can meet them or whatever. You enjoy it." So I did, and I played, and I met somebody that ended up hiring me to. It was Mike Holder, was a steel guitar player for Cement City.
Okay.
Cement City Conference. And I said, geez, we should, maybe start a band or something. I'm just chomping at the bit, like chomping at the bit. I just trying to meet people and do stuff. And he goes, "Well, I was thinking, maybe you could join our band." I'm like, "What?" And they hired me. We went into the studio. It was the initial sort of meeting of everybody, and did some recording, and then we started playing. They were already out there playing, but it was like one of the happiest days of my life.
Yeah.
Of coming home. I remember, just la-di-da-di-da. I'm in a band.
Yeah.
I'm playing professionally full time.
Right.
Boom.
That's amazing.
On the road. Right?
On the road. All over.
I was so excited. My first gig in a small town outside of Toronto, 6-nighter, is Saturday comes, the end of the night, and we're starting to tear down. And the leader, Phil, turns around and hands me $180, which was decent money back then, sort of.
Yeah.
And I had completely forgotten that you get paid. I was like, "Oh yeah, and I get $180.
Right.
This is insane. Like what a gig, what a thing this is." I never forgot again after that. But like, "Come on, give me the money." But that was the, and I've worked for people. I remember one artist I worked for that said, "Why are we on the road here? Why are we doing this?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He goes, "For the money." And I went, "No, I'm not doing it for the money. I never have."
Yeah.
It was never for the money.
No, I can relate to that. There comes a point where you realize how important money is, but that's not why we got into it. I mean, I would spend money to get to the gig, to play for free, Yeah.
And it's not that it's not important to us. It's not like we want to work for nothing. And I'm the opposite. I'm very, I try to be, businesslike about, I want to get paid out of principle,
Right.
But that's not what motivates me to play. Right. And obviously the same for you.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned you were on the road with your band. At some point, you started doing a lot of touring you toured with a lot of artists, including Ronnie Hawkins, who is,
you guys know Ronnie Hawkins.
I've never met Ronnie Hawkins, of course, but I'm a fan of, I'm a big fan of the band and what. So I know where he fits into all of that, and of course, I've seen The Last Waltz 3 million times, so I've seen him come out and do his thing. What was it like to tour with the great Ronnie Hawkins, the Hawk?
Well, I had, everybody knew Ronnie, and as far as knowing of him. And he was crazy, right? He's nuts. He'd be playing somewhere, and place would be packed. And if there was anybody in, this is in Toronto or anywhere near Toronto, if anything was going on in Toronto, like a movie stars, like they're doing a movie or there's a sports thing going on, any celebrities, they would go gravitate to him because they knew there'd be something going on there.
Right.
Like there'd be something afterwards, a party, there'd be shit going on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember going to one of them, and it was Ronnie was being an extreme version of Ronnie and pissing off a lot of people, but very funny. Like if you're not one of those people, it was pretty funny.
I love it.
He's extremely funny, and he's got a lot of sort of lines that he uses, but besides the ones that he sort of pulls out all the time, he's pretty fast on his feet. It's pretty hard to stump him. But anyway, but he was a partier, right? And everybody around him was just a moving party. That's what it looked like anyway to me.
Yeah.
And so I was really excited when he hired me a few years later, except I realized that he had sort of settled down by the time I got to him. I was quite disappointed. Because I was at the period of my life where I'm like, I'm really looking forward to doing this,
Absolutely.
And he had very much settled down. The band everybody was pretty sedate. There wasn't anything crazy going on. There were stories of, days gone by kind of stuff, but we didn't, Ronnie had a type of situation where you rehearsed more than you actually played. So it started out good with some gigs, and I'm like, yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
And then it was like nothing for a while. But then he'd fire somebody in the band. We're not sure why, but he'd get rid of somebody and bring in another player, and we'd have to rehearse that new player in. So we'd go out to his farm, rehearse for a few days, and then then you do a couple more gigs, then somebody else gets fired.
Yeah, right.
So there was a whole bunch of that. But there was a couple of versions of that band through these changes all the time that were really something. Like there's a couple of people that I'm still really close with. And we went to Europe for a month twice. And that was pretty neat too. Touring is tough, as I've heard you touch on with a couple other interviews.
Yeah. On the other hand, it's like it's something that it's going to be tough, but it's something you can't wait to get back into. At least for me, I really do enjoy it.
Are you still doing that?
Well, I haven't toured since March 12th of last year. Yeah. But we're we're trying to figure out when we might get back to it. Maybe later in the fall or in the spring of next year. So, yeah, I mean, that said, it's been, all things considered, I really have enjoyed being home with my wife and my dog and.
That's what happened to me after touring for a few years, is I realized once I was home for a while, I was like, geez, I really like being home.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew? I thought my wife would throw me out by now. I mean, and she was excited to have me home, and I'm like, how long is this going to last? Right? She's going to be like ready to get me back out the door. But no, it's been good.
Good.
I want to talk a little bit about your. You have a massive history in the recording studio, doing all sorts of projects, from records, of course,
right,
to movie soundtracks, to jingles, and I'd like to pick your brain a little bit about that, because I just know that there's a lot of guys out there that would love to follow that avenue, and a lot of times folks just don't know how to get it done, or more so, what it takes to be good at it.
Yeah, well, that's probably not a bigger mystery, but the more important part of it. This is how it was done. I mean, first of all, it's changed. Right? What the way things are done.
Yeah.
I do 98% of my recording virtually now from home, from my studio here, and that's changed completely. I mean, they were all in-person sessions all those years. So, but I mean, how I got into it was through a recommendation of one of the studio guys. Pepe Francis was, he's a Canadian country, not country, he'll kill me for saying that. He was country back then, Canadian guitar player, but he was heavily involved in the studio scene. And there was a scene, like there was a group of players that all did the session work. It'd be Nashville,
Sure.
you know, the mecca of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, you got 15 people or whatever doing millions of sessions. If they recommend somebody, you're good as gold. I mean, they're not going to recommend somebody that is an idiot or can't do it or whatever. Although I question Pepe's judgment because the idiot factor, you'll find there's a few things that I was a bit of an idiot with. My first session, I'll tell you, I've got some funny stories with it. So my first one, I had done a couple of sessions, like in a small studio. I can't think of the artist names, but you guys probably wouldn't know anyway. But where that was cool, and I really liked it. I really liked doing session work. I loved the sound that you could get. Like it was just like, wow, I've been practicing really hard, and listen to how good it sounds when it's done right in a good studio. It's like, holy geez. But the first big session I got was through Pepe Francis, for a Labatt Blue commercial.
Yeah.
And I go down there, downtown Toronto, and I walk in, and I'm a kid. I know nothing. I can't read a note. I still can't read. I still don't know any music theory at all. I mean, a tiny bit that I've been picking up lately, but knew absolutely nothing then, and never been in certainly this type of studio environment at all. So I walk in, and they're recording on the floor in one of the rooms. I see what I now know to be the marketing team and the producer, Sid Kessler, sitting at the board, and a couple other people wandering around. Nobody's there to sort of say, hey, Roly, you sit over here, you sit in this back room till we call you.
Yeah.
They assume I've done this 8,000 times before,
right.
Like as everyone else that's in there does. It's like going to work and punching the clock for them.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm supposed to stand. I don't know where I'm not in the room, but I'm standing outside the closed door to the floor, right, where they're recording. And I can hear them recording something. I don't know if that's the song I'm doing, but I pull out a harp and I go start playing along to it very quietly like this. And people are passing me and stuff. And then the key changes. Now it's the same song, but it's in a different key. I'm like, okay, they've changed the key. Okay. F sharp. Okay. And I figure out some stuff. And then they said, okay, it's Roly, come on in. And they put me on the floor as an overdub. I got a chart in front of me. Yeah. It says dobro. They got the wrong chart, which I made a little joke about because they've got sheet music in front of me, and they quickly put the harmonica sheet music in front of me. And they said they just, okay, let's roll it. And everybody's staring at you through the glass.
Right.
Fortunately, I mean, incredibly fortunately, I had heard the song a few times. So I had a kind of an idea of what I was going to play, and I just played it straight, 30-second little thing, and I played it straight through from start to finish.
Yeah. Without
really making a mistake. But I don't know what they wanted. I just played what I thought I should play.
Yeah.
And the producer goes, that's great. Let's double it. Oh. Luckily, I had in this case, I'd actually figured out a sort of a set thing that I was going to play, which is not normally what I do at all. And I doubled it, which was, whoa, that's good.
Yeah.
Note for note. And I was done. No. Then he says, okay, let's do the 60. I don't know what a 60, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know anything about what they're talking about. They're asking me to run it and do all these terms that I'm not used to. I hear the song and I realize it's in the other key. Oh, okay. So I pick up the other key. I don't know. And then I just played along to that one. And I finished, and I walk into the control room where everybody's sitting, the marketing people, and I go, what's a 60 and what's a 30? and he just is one of the writers is there, his eyes bug out, and he goes, one's 60 seconds and one's 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Same song, we just did it in two different keys. I went, oh,
Yeah.
thank you. And Sid Kessler goes, I love this kid, I love him. He doesn't know shit about music, but he can play his ass off. And he actually walked me out, and if you knew this guy, he's not of that type, but he put his arm around me, sort of walked me out, and he goes, man, he says, I work with these guys all the time, and same thing every day. He says, it's so nice he liked me. Nice. And he thought it was, I think he liked underdogs, the fact that I couldn't read, and, like some hillbilly or something that I'll figure it out,
Yeah, right.
So that was my first.
So you learned a lot right then. Again, it's like being on stage. You're in the situation, you're adjusting, and just this flooding of information.
Yeah, I mean, that was another moment, I guess, in my career where when I walked home and I went, wow, I just played on a national commercial.
Yeah.
It's going to be on TV,
Right. Right. How cool is that?
Yeah, look, that's me.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it went on from there, doing jingles for that same guy. He wound up owning probably the largest studio in Toronto, this complex of about 8 different studios within it. And I was the guy that they would hire for most of these things. Yeah. And I was very fortunate. I'm going to say this because I don't read music, and I'm not saying that because it's like you shouldn't learn how to read music. I was extremely fortunate that they were willing to tolerate that and accommodate me.
Uh-huh.
So they would, almost always I'd be an overdub because I can't read, because they're, you know what it's like. They sit down, 5 guys sit down in a studio. They've never played the song in their life. Boom, and they're done.
It's amazing. Actually.
Yeah, and you got to be able to. How do you do that? And I've done many sessions that way, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, I can't read music. I'm a harmonica player, not a musician.
I totally get it. I had a similar experience. My first Nashville session, I went in and they put a chart, a Nashville number chart in front of me. And now I started on saxophone, so I could read a little music, but there was no way I could have read music the way I played on sax and transferred that to the harmonica. I just had no abilities at that. And I had never even seen a number chart.
Right. So okay.
They said, "You know how to read numbers, right?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." I'm like, my time is numbered in this town. They're gonna kick me right out, But yes, I learned quickly. Had to learn quickly.
Yeah. There was one got a call for, and is a new company studio I hadn't been in before, so I go down. And I'm greeted by the producer, and the engineer has got his back to me at the board. Mm-hmm. And the producer says, "Hey, Roly, great, thanks so much for coming." He says, "Listen, we had to change the key to like, B flat or something. Is that going to be okay with you?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I got all 9 keys." And I said it with a straight face, and he went white, and the engineer spun around like, who the hell did we just hire to do this very expensive commercial or whatever it was?
Right.
And I'm going, I'm kidding.
I love it. Well, you had a good sense of humor even then. That's fantastic.
Yeah, probably I got to watch who I'm saying it to. Now, what to me was funny is they only did that because I was a harmonica player. Any other instrument, they would have laughed right off the bat. Boom, that's a good joke, right? But because the harmonica player said it, they thought it might have been serious.
Factual, absolutely. Yeah, we're always on the low end of the totem pole when it comes to that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fortunate. So you've done a lot of live work, but clearly, as we spoken about, a lot of studio work. What are some of the differences that you find, your approaches to live playing in a band situation? Or
good question. Mm-hmm. yeah, and I think this also shaped how I play as well. Um, Live, first of all, I consider myself, or I believe I am, a sideman harmonica player. Probably one of, not one of the few, but many more out there that have their own bands that are frontmen.
Right.
It's their show.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had that other than a couple of little gigs or whatever. I've always been either a band member or a sideman, a hired gun, kind of in a as a sideman to somebody else. And in the studio, you're always a sideman,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless it's
Right.
your record. So what I learned, what you can get away with on stage, even in your own band type of thing, or I mean, being a member of a band, is you can play more. You can, it is about you at times, like at least you get the spotlight, as my buddy would, training me in early years saying, there's one ball and, you get your turn with the ball and then you pass the ball to somebody else,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Right.
And so in the studio, it's that idea, but magnified or to the extreme.
Yeah.
So it's not about me ever.
Right.
As you find out very quickly, because you think, geez, you think they'd be wanting to talk to me more, but nope, you're done. Okay, see you later. You're out the door. Half an hour later, you're gone. Like
right.
You're in, you're out.
Yeah.
But it's all about the song
Mm-hmm.
and the artist.
Mm-hmm.
So they're usually sort of tied together or whatever. But everything has to. I mean, this is what I've learned over the years. I didn't know this stuff going in, believe me. But that's an important. If you want to understand where I come from now, that's where I got it from, is learning that it's about supporting the song, playing the right thing in the right place. Right. And just that, nothing else.
Right.
So playing, half as much as I probably would like to play, or I think, oh, it'd be cool if I did this or whatever, leaving out a lot of things and just playing something that supports what's going on. And if it's a fill in a verse, what's going on? The lyrics are going on and the singer is singing her song or his song. I'm not going to do something that's going to distract from that, right? It's all about the focus of, what's, sometimes you want something that's busy in there because it calls for that, or there's a place for it. But a lot of times it's one or two notes, so it's that kind of thinking to start with. The other thing is you have to develop I don't know how good I was at it, but a incredible memory of what they just told you to do. Because once you've sort of played, then they start giving you direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the third, I love this, and I do exactly what you do, just nod. I have no idea what they're talking about. In the 16th bar, there's a B flat chord. Can you play more? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, sure. I don't have time to process or go, okay, how many bars was that? Process this stuff. I just think I know, hope I know what they're talking about, and I just try and give them what they want, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I many times where I'm just nod and wave, like, sure, yeah, I can do that. Can you make it more like? And they'll describe something. I'll go, yeah, I know exactly what that means.
No idea. Yeah. I've been in that situation many times, and I find that it's especially with sessions, it's like they want the vibe of the harmonica. Oftentimes, they just want a little bit of that vibe thrown into the track, just to, as you say, support the vocal, or just to give the song a certain appeal, and it's the easy stuff that you like, a lot of times, right? Just a little chug or a little like weird little. Something.
Particularly with things like, well, I mean, it can be with a an album or something like that, but particularly with commercial music.
Mm-hmm.
I did one for Pioneer, I think it was Pioneer Stereos, and I heard the tune, so I'm he just lets me go, do your thing, and I'm playing something up on the top end or whatever.
Yeah.
And he stops in the middle of it. He goes, Roly, they want harmonica, not piccolo. And so, and he goes, like play, and he knows me, so he's joking. He goes, I know, man, I know. He says you got to play really bad, like you got to play. You give him harmonica, and I go, so I hold it in my other hand, the opposite hand, so it's awkward. Yeah, that's it. Perfect. And that I learned that this is advertising. This isn't music. This isn't the music business in that world, right? In the jingle world, you're selling products, and so you have to be willing to, just give them what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you? I'm curious as to what kind of how do you, when you show up to the studio? I guess they tell you beforehand, hey, bring an amp, or we're going to do like a bullet thing, or not. What do you
sometimes
fall into the studio? Do you bring it all, or do you primarily end up just playing through a condenser mic? When you're in the studio situations, what's the scenario there?
I always, I mean, if they don't tell me, I always bring an amp as well. But I always ask, do you want it acoustic or do you want it through an amp, just to say bring it in. If they say, oh, no, definitely acoustic, or if they say, bring it in, because they never know. And sometimes you think, an amp's not going to work in this, and then you try it and it's like, you know what, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So they usually set up either both, or, I'll certainly have both with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to be prepared.
Yeah, and a lot of the country stuff that I did, a lot of these recordings that I did were acoustic, because especially back then, because it was less. An amp started to sound a little too progressive, a little too.
Right.
What are you trying to do there? This is before Garth Brooks, and before like some of these Travis Tritt and some of these bands that actually had some great harp players. It was Charlie McCoy kind of thing, and they'd say, we want McCoy on this, right? Mm-hmm. So I got to do my Charlie. Now if we've got time, he was a huge influence on me as well. So Butterfield was my inspiration for that emotional delivery, that powerful emotional. Mm-hmm. And his phrasing, and he's not that he was I do workshops on Butterfield, and I look back on his stuff, and he's not very advanced, as a player compared to so many other players. That's not what was great about him. It was that emotional delivery and his choice of phrasing mm-hmm. that he did that was different than other guys were doing then in that time period. And for me, once I sort of started to understand, or at least tap into some of the basics of what he was doing, it opened the door to a million other things. Yeah. And that's, sometimes that's all you can ask for, is somebody to open the door for you, So McCoy, I would listen to his records and practice, try and pick up tunes that I could, and learned a few different tunes. And I'd watching Hee Haw, and I heard you talking about this before. I can't remember with who.
Charlie. Maybe it might have been with Charlie. I interviewed him, and we did talk a little.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I got to check that out. But he was musical director of Hee Haw, which Mm-hmm. And I'd watch it for the same reason that every other harp player. Maybe they're going to do a little jam thing with all the hot pickers, and we get to hear him play some fast stuff or whatever. This one, he's in the backup band, sort of behind the little gate thing, and the solo artist, I can't remember who it was, very famous country singer. This is way back, and she's singing a big country hit that she had. And I'm thinking, what's he going to do? This is going to be kind of lame, probably. He plays. I can't imitate it because there's nothing. You have to hear the chords underneath it. But there was just like, something simple. And I'm listening, and I'm like, he's not playing a fill. He's playing a part. Uh-huh. and could have been played on violin, on fiddle, or steel guitar. It was a part which he probably wrote, or else he lifted it from the original. But it was charted, I'm sure,
Yeah.
as this little harmonica thing is going to go here.
Yeah.
And or maybe it was done by fiddle on the record. I'm going to play it on harp here, but it was a part that suited that song perfectly.
Yeah.
It was an arrangement of a simple 3 or 4 notes, and that you hear all the time other instruments do. Like for years, that's why I tell my students, stop listening to harmonica players after a while, and start listening to other instruments. They've been doing it better than us for a long, long time. It's changing now, but so anyway, I heard that and I realized, okay, he's playing a musical idea, like an arrangement, a part, and it changed slowly. But I mean, that's when I started to focus on those types of things in my playing. So when I hear a song, I try and find simple, effective things, combinations of notes that work. I mean, not all the time. When I post all my videos where I'm jamming and going crazy or whatever, I'm doing that as well. But if I was playing with somebody singing a song, I would look for those types of things, try and find. So stop thinking harmonica and start thinking instrument, just music, right? So it doesn't matter that what I play, and it doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, I mean, to me, I got into graphic design about 20 years ago or more. Long story, but I had a career shift where I not left music, but I had to look for something else because I just wasn't happy playing. I sort of jaded and got burnt out and whatever. But I got into graphic design as a career. Went to school and all that, which has taught me a lot about music, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Learning the principles of design and things, and going, oh, that's what that is in music. Logo design, right, which I've done quite a bit of, won a couple of awards and stuff. The whole idea of that is to take an idea and simplify it into the absolute simplest little thing you can. And people see the end result and go, what? I'm paying $2,000 for that, 3 little lines or whatever. Right. Try and get there from this, like that's the whole goal, is to get the ultimate simple representation of an idea. So playing, again, this is where I learned this in music. If you need to be able to do all the complicated stuff, but what I really enjoy now is, sometimes taking those things and pulling stuff out until you get the essence of an idea. Like just play, whatever it is, a couple of cool notes in the right spot, and leave the other stuff out. Not all the time, but in the right situation. And I get off on that, simplifying. I feel like I've done a little logo design, look at that. It represents my idea,
Love that. You mentioned thinking about other instruments. I do that also. I'll try to be like, hey, instead of thinking of myself as the harp player on this, I'm gonna be the B3 player, and I'm gonna do some chord stuff. I'm gonna do some chunky, like syncopated stuff, and I'm just gonna try to emulate that, and then it comes out with something complete. It's amazing how it changes your focus, and you come up with something fresh and more interesting, maybe.
Yeah, and that's another direction that it started in my first band, Cement City, and that steel player that got me the gig would say, in between sets, so he goes, if you're looking for something to do, he says, you can just play the offbeat, chuck, chuck, and he'd do it on the steel guitar with his thumb pick, chuck, chuck. And he'd tell me, count 1, 2, 1, and 2, and 3. That was my beginning. So I'd sit and do that on stage, start to go, And it was more out of not wanting to just stand there like an idiot in between when I'm not playing, right? I didn't like doing that. I didn't know what to do. I can't dance. I don't move around on stage. I'm boring. And so, I could get a newspaper or something and sit and read in between. But so I started doing that because it was something to do, right? Literally. And that evolved over 44 years of, starting to play with the timing of things. And you mentioned B3, like doing splits and chords and things. That kind of those rhythmic patterns, I call it groove based playing, where you're not really playing a fill because you're sort of playing a groove, but it is a fill. So you could do in between the vocals, instead of going single notes or a fill type of thing, you could go a repeating little rhythmic thing like you'd hear the organ player do, or another instrument might do. So that's the other thing I love to do is then I'm not so much in the front line of the lead guitar and the lead harmonica. I'm back with the drummer and the bass player and the rhythm guitar player or the organ player. And that's what a cool place to be, when you don't have to be out front, soloing, and look at me type of thing.
Right.
Just grooving with the band a little bit and finding these patterns that add to, not complicate, right? Find it really simple. Like it has to be super simple, or else it starts to sound like a busy harmonica player trying to play rhythm, trying to think he's a rhythm instrument. Yeah. And you can get carried away with that.
Yeah. And nobody wants to hear that from a harmonica player, especially. Like they always give us this guy anyway, as soon as we come near the bandstand.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've done that in the studio sometimes, just in between, as a take or something like that. And then some people will go, geez, I didn't even know you could do that. Like, I didn't even know that was an option to ask for.
Right.
The rhythmic sort of things, because it's got an organic kind of tone to it, even if you don't hear the notes, but just those sounds are in the mix. When you hear it in a song, you don't even know what it is, right? It's just a sound. You can't really tell that's a harmonica, right?
Right.
So yeah, I love that kind of stuff. Also got a lot of ideas from Butterfield in that. If you want to hear, do you know the Levon Helm and the RCO All Stars album?
Yeah. I love Levon Helm.
Cropper and I can't think of all the people on it. All-star cast.
Yeah.
Listen to it again and count how many solos are on that album, on the whole album. There's probably like 3 solos on the whole album. It's all rhythmic comping in between stuff. Where there would be a little solo or a turnaround, there's comping. And Butterfield's on a lot of these tracks, and he's comping. He'll do Rain Down Tears, like an organ, the swell, the vibrato. But he'd do the same part every time that would come up in the song. So he's just being part of the rhythm section, in these little things. And so those are where I got my ideas from. There's a million other places, but
I was always struck with, I mentioned being a fan of the band, and The Last Waltz being one of my favorite, musical documentary movies, whatever. I was always struck by when Muddy Waters comes out and does Mannish Boy. Butterfield is just going, just doing like a little warble, but he does that warble like through the whole song. He doesn't do anything else.
Yeah.
No fills. No. I was like, you're Paul Butterfield. Come on, what's going on? But it sounds so dope.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. I'm like,
yeah. And it doesn't take away from, again, it's where do you want the spotlight? And, there's always room to do the fancy stuff, which I love that stuff. I can't wait till I get to do my feature songs, that I can go crazy in or whatever. Yeah. But the rest of the time, I like to do the opposite, like to do the be a musician type of thing.
Right. I think that's great advice for all of us to hear. You know, be that guy first, actually, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I split my career into, trying to be a great harmonica player for years, and then trying to become a good musician
Right.
for the last part of it.
Yeah. Because as harp players, it's, we're overtaken, I think, at the beginning with, well, the way it sounds and the way it makes us feel. And we want to play those licks. But at some point you realize that you're the least intelligent or not. I misspoke. The most ignorant musician in the band.
Least educated, probably,
As
as far as musically
far as
educated.
music, yeah. So it's like, okay, I don't want to. I want to be part of that conversation.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, and I mean, we've all, anybody that plays harmonica have had to fight that, the misery whistle, oh no, we got a harmonica player coming up to jam.
The misery whistle. I like.
I did a trip to New Orleans about 4 years ago with my wife. I'd never been there before. Always wanted to go. I loved it. It was like, incredible.
Yeah.
And one night I said, you know what? I'm hearing music everywhere. Right? It's driving me crazy because I just want to play. Right? That's what happens when I hear music. I want to play it, and stuff that I like to play. I couldn't believe it. And so I said to my wife, I said, I'm taking my harps out for one night, and just carry them. I'm not going to carry them around in case something happens every time I go out. So, and I went into this club, and there's a band playing some shit hot stuff. It was great. And it was like going back to when I was 17 and I'm trying to get up at the jam at downtown Toronto at the big blues club or something.
Yeah.
I had to talk to the guitar player and tell him I'm from out of town. I play harmonica. Like I tried to hold that off as long as possible in the conversation. And then, I know, what you're thinking, you probably think I said, trust me, I can play or whatever. I'm trying to get up on stage, and they got me up, but you could tell it was reluctant.
Yeah.
And then he goes, he's trying to explain the song. I said, don't worry about it. Just play, just start. And I played, nailed it.
Yeah.
And it was like, everybody on stage relaxes and they all like coming up afterwards. Here's my card, like talking to you and stuff like this. But it was really, it took me right back to the early days, and that's the reaction you get. I mean, with any instrument, but certainly with harmonica, and on the same night, if you don't mind, this other story that made up for it. We're walking home. We're about 3 doors from where we were staying in the French Quarter, and there's this tiny little bar, which there's music everywhere. So there's another band, 6-piece band, trombone, all this stuff, just nailing it, right? Yeah. And we sat down outside just to listen. We didn't want to go in, but there was about 4 people in the club. And we're listening, and they're playing away, and the female singer is singing Purple Rain, but in this really soulful band. And she is getting the audience, the 5 people in there thing, with the microphone going around to hear her sing. Yeah. And then she sees us sitting outside, and she starts coming towards them. I'm like, no, don't ask me to sing, please. Like, we shouldn't have sat down. And my harps were on the ground, and she comes up while she's singing, and my wife is pointing to the harmonicas to her, like, no, harmonica, like this. And she doesn't even know what, got my belt, rolled up like this.
Right.
And anyway, so I figure out the key, and she hands me the mic, and the band's still inside. They can't really see. And I start soloing on Purple Rain, which was actually quite a great song to play on, which I wasn't aware of till that moment. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going nuts on the street, playing wirelessly into the club, and the band's sticking their head out going, who is this guy, right? And they got me up for about 5 songs. But it was one of those spontaneous things that if you had to ask to get up, it wouldn't have been the same. But it was just some unknown person in the bar that happens to get up and does, can play really well or whatever. Yeah. It was one of those very memorable experiences.
Right on. Well, speaking of memorable experiences, when I saw your recent video with Will Wild, where you guys were playing together, I was just like flipped out. I mean, in fact, I think I just listened to that song for days, like on.
Oh, really? You're the guy.
I might be the guy. Yeah, I just thought it was fantastic, and the way you guys played together, and you know,
I credit Will for putting that together. It was Will wrote the head to that. And so here's a backstory to that: is he picked the tune um, for us to do, and he says, "I'll write I'll come up with the head." So he sends me back a little mix with the head for me to do something with, to learn, or he doesn't, we haven't figured out what we want to do with it, but he's got his part. Well, that's nice. Will's got his part. He's using his wild tune harmonica.
right.
And so they're right out of the gate, there's notes on there that I can't even get on my harp, right?
Right.
There was one note in particular in the head that I can't. And I said, Will, I don't use overblows. I just play regular boring harmonica. And he says, "Oh yeah, I'm using my tuned harp or something." He says, "Well, you'll figure something out." What? So, so what I figured out was, if I played the harmony to it, I could get all the notes I need on those two little lines that I do, and which actually, by coincidence or by fluke, worked out nice because it was a nice unison thing and then a nice little harmony thing at the end. So it was like I planned it that way, but it was really out of necessity.
Right.
I mean, I could have figured it out on, switching to a different harp, but for practical purposes, no.
Sure.
But yeah, I really enjoyed doing that with Will.
I tried to learn that very part you're talking about, and I'm like, I can't play this on.
There you go.
It's fun, and
you can learn my part. The harmony.
Absolutely, it was fantastic though. I just loved it. We talked a little bit about your gear and that kind of stuff, but I wanted to expound on a piece of gear that you have developed that I purchased on your website. The Harpwa. It comes in a really cool case.
That thing.
That's the one. Yeah. Now I have the silver one with the yeah, and I love it. And I hate to put you on the spot. I should have asked you this before we recorded, but I was wondering if you could give us a quick little 2-minute tutorial on how to get the most out of this particular piece of gear. It's so cool.
Sure. They all come with the handle now, so you've got it right there. It just goes under your over your third finger or whatever. I guess I'll tell you what not to do first, because the way it was designed, and it's probably my own fault, but with the slot the size that it is, and people see the harmonica, they assume that this harmonica must drop into the slot.
That's what I
completely, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're left with the task of trying to grab the harmonica with this awkward little thing.
Right.
It's actually not how it's supposed to work.
Okay.
And just so you know, I put that in the instructions in the thing, right? That you threw out, I'm sure.
I have them right.
Oh, you do have it, okay. Because I would have thrown them out if I got this. I go, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. So you hold it like this, and you, just like a bullet mic, you suspend it. Like, hold it the way you normally hold it. Otherwise, the whole product, I throw it in the garbage because I don't want to change the way I play it. That's the whole idea of the way it's designed. So you just sort of float it over, and then, my thumb kind of rests down here. So, I mean, you got to find your spot, but it doesn't go into the slot like any more than your fingers will let you in your normal grip.
Okay.
Right? Just like a bullet mic, there's a tiny bit of a chamber there. You do what's comfortable. I also do this. I can't see it in that angle, but I tilt it back towards my palm slightly, which kind of puts this edge here, the front edge. I can kind of rest the harp on that, which helps a bit as well.
Okay. Okay.
Push it forward a bit in a bit of an angle, if you can see that.
I can see that. Yes. And
then it's basically the same principles as regular hand cupping, right? There's no big science to it. But, I see a lot of people do the, complete open and close. you can do that, but it gets kind of lame after a while. So
Right on.
what I use it for, and I use this in the studio. I've used it with David Clayton Thomas and acoustic shows that I do and things. Is just it has its own tone, just without doing anything with it.
Uh-huh.
And as you close it off, you're going to get that muted sound, and with the thin aluminum, you get the resonance happening of it. And then you can open and close from there, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to overdo it. I don't, anyway. So I just use it to add a little bit of color to that acoustic sound, because other than your hands, which is everything, your hand cupping techniques. But I mean, it's always, your hands are always going to sound like your hands.
Sure.
This has that metallic sort of honk to it that you get, that just gives a little color, and it's an effect that you'd only use once in a while.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't. I think when I first launched this, people thought, well, you don't use that all the time. No, you don't use it all the time. Once in a while, like everything else.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think it's actually ingenious. How hard do you know how hard it is? Yes, you in fact do, but most people don't understand how hard it is to come up with something that hasn't been done before, or at least in a practical way.
Yeah. It's an old. It's the idea is old, but it was. I was using a cup. I was using a cup at 17. I was experimenting with tubes and cups and rubber hoses and everything else. What can I do? Will this work if I run a pipe, hose into something else? That's what I would do, and so I came up with like a prototype of this not that many years ago. Like a bed homemade cup, but that you play through, right?
Yeah.
Not like a can or something. Yeah, not that. I mean, I've done that as well, and I'd use that on stage because it did what I wanted it to. This works much better. The tone of it's better, but harp players would see it and go, "What is that?" And ask me, and then they go, "You should sell those," and I'm like, "No," and then they got to a point where I started looking into it, and that, like you said, it's never mind coming up with the idea, but the manufacturing world and all this business end of it, and the patent, which I wrote myself.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's like going to law school or something. Like it was crazy, but it was a great experience because I did everything: the website, the marketing, the design, the design of this, everything, literally everything.
That's fantastic. It's inspiring, actually. I have something that I have sort of I'll loosely say invented, that I use, that I've always wanted to sort of follow in your footsteps and put it out there, but I've done enough research to find out how difficult getting it from off of the bench to having it produced and made and shipped, and it's like very daunting. There's a lot that goes into it.
It is. Yeah, it helps if you've got any connections in that world, or you can leverage any friends that are already doing stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend me, but if I could help, I certainly will.
That's fantastic.
But I would definitely help. And I don't know anything other than what I learned in my tiny little world here. But it's expensive, is what it boils down to. So people say, "Have you made a smaller one? That's easier to hold." To do that would be an investment of many thousands of dollars just to get, just to see if it's going to sell, just to see if people like it or not. All these things, prototyping, and it's just every level of it is expensive.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was sort of stopped in my tracks. I'm like, I just don't have the money to see this one through. right now, you know?
Yeah, it might. I mean, and you might want to talk to somebody else and partner with them or something,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
see,
yeah.
like, here's the idea. Maybe, with your expertise, we can do something together. I think it's pretty cool if you can, if it is a good idea. I think it might be worth pursuing, but you'd have to tell me.
Yeah, I tell you after the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, no, so tell me, I want to know what's the end of COVID looks like it's looming on the horizon for us all. Um, I know you've been focusing more on staying at home, and you, as you say, you do most of your session work from your home. I mean, you've got this worked out pretty well. But any aspirations to get back out and playing in the club?
No.
All right,
No.
all right,
And I like it like this.
man.
Um, COVID, what are you talking about? Canada's behind schedule compared to you guys, where the virus itself sort of, the wave that we're getting is delayed from what you guys got. And we're a little shy on vaccines, so we're it's looking very promising now. So we're going to be good in a couple of months, but that's why we're still in half lockdown here.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's been a long haul, this COVID period, and to be honest, I'd be lying if I was to say it's oh yeah, it's been great, I've been handling it well or whatever. I've done my best considering the circumstances, but as a musician, it's been very difficult on the head at times. Other times I thought I've done a great job at getting through stuff and coming up with new ideas. I'm teaching now more than ever and doing some workshops,
Great. Tell us
which I really, eh?
Tell us more about that, actually. How
Yeah.
can folks get in touch with you to take advantage of?
Yeah. The best website to get any information on me really is harmonicamute.com. And which is where I sell the Harpwa. I've got all the workshops for sale on there. I've got my CD for sale and downloads and anything else, and that's where I post pretty much every video that I do. I have a YouTube channel as well, but that website has now become where you can find out everything about me. I got harmonica jokes on there, everything.
A
My
lot.
own harmonica jokes.
Yeah. Oh man. Yes. So your seminars, your workshops, private.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to be playing live as much as you can imagine. Like, I can't wait to do, So we've got some gigs. I play with a band called Soul Stack in Canada here, a killer band of original material. I do some stuff with them, a variety of people. I'm still a sideman. So, I do a whole bunch of different things. I've got the Harpwa stuff going. I'm teaching now more. So I'll be continuing that, which I think is a wise move, even when things open up. I think the fact that it's online,
Yeah.
I like. That's one of the benefits of COVID, is forcing people to go, what, I can do this online.
Right. Yes.
Many things like that. So I'm certainly, I think the writing's on the wall for me. The music business is I'm sure you see better than me, has changed. So it's a tough business, tougher than it used to be. And, so my plan isn't to go try and start touring again. And, those days are gone. But I welcome, the opportunity to do some of that, just not doing it full time for a living. I do some web stuff and graphic design as well. And, yeah, so about 50 different things, and I almost make a living. If you combine them all, it's almost a living.
Right. When we got into the business and wanted to be musicians, no one ever told me that. I mean, my dad always said, kid, you picked a tough row to hoe. But I don't think any of us knew to tell me, you're going to have to diversify, dude. You're going to have to do a lot of different things if you want to be a musician to make it all go.
And that was something that I didn't do and it was a mistake for many years. Like, even within the music business, I didn't diversify. I played harmonica.
Right.
That was it. Played harmonica. Tunnel vision. Tunnel vision. That's all I want to do, because I was comfortable doing that. And I realized way too late that, oh man, I should have been singing more. I should have been, band leading more, learning more about that. Stop being a chicken shit about it and just learn how to do it. Songwriting, which I would love to. If I live again in 3 more lifetimes, I want to play piano and I want to be a songwriter.
Now, wait a second, you are a songwriter. I mean,
Well, that was my taste, my dipping my toe into it, right? With a couple of tunes on the record, which I really like it. And I think, maybe I got lucky with a couple of the lyrics or something. I don't know. But I mean, I liked what I was coming up with. That's not a bad feeling. So.
And your record, your CD is still available on your website as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. Through the same website.
Great record, by the way.
Thanks, man.
I'm a big fan,
There's
in case you
three CDs worth of harmonica on one CD. That's how much harmonica is on there. I've condensed it down so that it's actually bursting at the seams with harmonica.
I love it. That's great. Well, we all appreciate that, man. Yeah. One more question for you before I let you go. I notice you have a sort of a unique way that you hold the harmonica to your mouth. It's
I do.
Well, sort of like what, like almost.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Yeah.
Now you want to see me tongue block? People say, "Are you tongue blocking this little phrase in this song?" And I'll go, "You'll know I'm tongue blocking when my hand is like this." That's the answer right there.
Oh, I love it. So any benefits to playing this way?
I did that right out of the gate when I was learning how to, the first thing you have to do is hit a single note, cleanly. And then the next thing is bending, right? And to do bending, you have to have the clean single note. And I found that easier. I found when I turned it, I don't know why, it distorts your lips a bit, but it was easier to nail the single note.
Okay.
And your hands are kind of in a nice neutral position as opposed to like this, right? Which was the other thing. But years later, everybody asked me about it, and the only thing I could think of is the holes are taller in general on most harps, taller than wide, right?
Yeah.
So if you turn it on an angle, the width of that square goes this way, which is the direction of how your mouth works. It's probably bullshit, but that's what I said. The guy goes, "Wow, that makes sense." Yeah. That makes total sense. I mean, it could be that, but I don't know why. But that's how I play.
I love it. Well, you're a real harpslinger, and I'm honored that you're on the show today. Thank you so much for taking time to be here.
Really appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Big fan. Yes. So, and as I always say to everybody, because I just love this community so much, we've got to do this again sometime. So
I would love to.
We'll do round 2 at some point down the road.
Thanks so much,
everyone. The man, the legend, right here. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. It's been
my pleasure.
Take care. Peace.